Doctor Pack here, a real doctor with another fellow real doctor, Mike Israetel. Thank you for being in your own house, having us here as your guests to interview you. And we're here today, a groundbreaking video on how to make things simple from a man who likes things not so simple when it comes to training.
You think we're playing games out here? You think this is a fucking game? Go, mother. Yes. Touch. Another one. As complicated as possible. It's my source of ego.
So you are somebody that is known for optimizing all sorts of training variables for muscle growth. And I'm here to ask you, what are some basic tips for somebody who doesn't want to bother with learning anything about the science behind things? What would you say is the simplest approach to somebody getting very jacked and very strong?
Very jacked and very strong, or somewhat jacked and
very jacked and very strong? Like somebody you would look at and be like, nice, bro, you looking good.
So as a pedantic I do have to say a lot of that is genetically determined, and another big variable is time. Like if you train in this way that I will shortly describe for 5 months, you're not going to get very jacked. But for 5 years, you may be impressively jacked. I think if you want to get something like in the conversation for pretty fucking jacked, to me, 4 days a week of training is kind of where that conversation begins. 4 days per week training is enough frequency to make a big impact on your muscle size. 5 days a week is for optimizers. 6 days is for people who have no friends. And 6 days with 2-a-days is literally for hopeless idiots like myself and Jared Feather, IFB Pro, who have nothing and no one and live only to be in the gym, where we feel the least bad of any time we feel during the day. But still bad, I want to be clear about that. So 4 days a week of training is, to me, if someone talks to me like randomly at an airport or some shit like that, first thing I say is, who the f*** you, and why did my butlers push you away from me? But if the butlers aren't around, it's weird, I don't feel safe, I have to pretend I'm nice. So then you say, look, I want to get pretty fucking jacked, but also I follow Pack's channel, which means I'm a lazy piece of shit, and I do not have what it takes to put in serious work.
We love you all.
In any case, if someone was like, dude, look, I'm not trying to become a goddamn professional bodybuilder and piss away the good years of my life, but I want to be pretty jacked. What do I do? How many times a week should I train? I'd say 4 is a really good. Again, 3 can work, 5 can work, but 4 is like just enough to where you're for sure giving a good effort, and not so much like 5 may be superfluous for a lot of people. First thing. Second of all, I would say every muscle that you want to get big, train it twice a week. Once a week totally works. Training a muscle twice a week isn't a total increase in program volume. It's a different spread. So you can do 6 sets one day or 3 sets over 2 days. It's probably better to spread out your volume a little bit. And there's a lot of 4-day splits that are kind of cool. There's push-pull, upper lower, core and limbs, all kinds of stuff. And you can cycle these splits all the time if you like, but they're really, really simple. The next thing I would say is try to use mostly what I call distributed compounds. It's a term I made up, as most of my terms that I talk about I made up. These are exercises that are compound lifts, which means they involve more than one joint and more than one target muscle. At the same time, they don't really prioritize one of the muscles over the other in the movement. For example, the wide grip bench is a compound lift, but it really only kind of really trains your pecs if you think about it in any really meaningfully stimulative way. And the triceps are kind of like, Close grip bench definitely trains your pecs really well and trains your triceps really well. Another lift, underhand pull-up, is a good example. The upright row is a good example. These are lifts that if you use a lot of them in your program, you keep the shit real simple because you get to knock 2 birds with one stone out with one fucking lift. There's nothing wrong with isolations, but that's kind of like if you want to give yourself more work to do, you can pepper them in, no problem. But the more you can get done with compounds, kind of the better. Next thing is numbers of sets. Start at just 1 set of every exercise per session. That's 2 sets per muscle group per week. And just keep that until one of 2 things happens in your program. 1, you realistically feel like you're not even training. That's how little the challenge is. Or 2, rep strength isn't going up anymore and you feel super underdosed. Go to 2, then eventually go to 3, and eventually go to 4. And by eventually I mean months later, because you can get amazing gains. Like, just, you don't have to do all the volume in the world. If you feel challenged, everything's going well. If you're not feeling challenged, do another set. Eventually, your own volume landmarks will be something you discover, and you can realize, do I really want to do more volume? Is it worth my time? So on and so forth. That right there is kind of the core of the program, and in most cases, it requires 4 total hours at most of work per week. Use good technique, get stronger over time. As far as rep ranges and shit, anything between 5 and 30 reps is good. Most people will benefit from like sets of 5 to 10 early. It's much easier to learn an established technique when you have at least 5 reps per set to practice, because like if you're doing singles, you're like, I know how to do a squat, but I did 3 squats today. That's 3 sets of 1. But if you do many more reps than 10, the fatigue starts to break down your technique, and as a beginner, it doesn't really well because you end up being like, I just got tired and my back started rounding and then I squatting, but I really wasn't squatting anymore. So sets of 5 to 10 probably form the core of your workout. And also a lot of people that kind of want the simple approach, I feel like they want to be jacked, but they also want to be strong. And if you're real strong for sets of 8, getting strong for sets of 3 to 6 or even 1 at max is like a few weeks of periodization away. You're strong for sets of 20, like gives, I don't know, half a year for you to be able to do 1 at max.
Facts.
Every now and again, when an exercise feels kind of stale, like annoying your joints or just bored the of it, then you take an exercise that hits the similar muscles and you replace it. If you get tired and really kind of not jazzed about training at all, take a week off, go on vacation, come back, restart your plan, lower your volume back down because you're going to get super sore for no reason if you don't, and then start that wave again. That to me is a plan that's simple and I guess relative effort probably is worth discussing.
Yeah, for sure.
Just try hard. And to me, trying hard can be broken down into a few things. One, if the weight pushes back at you and slows down, you're trying pretty hard. So like if you do this, close grip bench, and you rack, if other people can't tell if it's a warm-up set or work set, a fucking problem. But if you do this and then you're like, it doesn't much matter if you go and then rack or and someone drags it off of you. The difference between that is if you do a lot of close to failure training, you're just going to have to deal it earlier. If you do a lot of training far from failure but still challenging, you'll just be more consistent for months on end. The average results probably tend to be the same, especially in the context of a low total volume, systemic fatigue wise. And 4 days a week for an hour is not going to probably overtrain anybody. So try hard, and the easy way to try hard is to write down your numbers using the RP hypertrophy app. Well, gee whiz, knew that was coming sooner or later. But legit, and any app you use, the RP hypertrophy app's a fine app, but any app you use, you just like track your shit, and then like every time you come to the gym, you look at what you did last week, and you like try to increase by a kilo here and there, or 2.5 kilos, 5 pounds, or just add a rep. And if you can't do that anymore because you're super tired, take a week off, change lifts, recycle, go back.
As easy as that. And would you say those guidelines also count for advanced trainees and people who have been training for a while?
I mean, they work until they don't. So if you're advanced and you give yourself this kind of 4-day-a-week program that's super simple, you're probably going to continue to make gains. Are they going to be gains at the speed that you're interested in? I have no idea what speed you're interested in. If you want to make more gains, you may have to make the process more complicated. If you want to walk across the street to say hello to a friend, you just get up and move your feet. If you want to run 10 miles, like you might have to bring a drink with you and think about like what's the route and what's the weather. Things that are more challenging necessitate a greater level of complexity. But I think some people have it backwards to where they like want something really straightforward and really simple and they're still making good gains. And they're like, how can I make this needlessly complicated?
Yeah.
Don't do that. If you're advanced, you may still get years of slow gains like this. But advanced means a few things. If you are advanced because years ago you had to start training 5 and 6 days a week and you're barely eking out gains and you're not overdoing it, it's not a recovery problem. If you go down to the method I just described, it's going to be barely detectable gains / just maintenance. And then if you're going to do maintenance, I would again seek your advice. And that's probably more like 2 days a week of whole body training you can maintain for months and months and months, maybe forever. 3 days for sure you can maintain. So if you want a gains program as a beginner, this is probably too much. I would say 2 to 3 days a week, but 4 is fine. As an intermediate, and the way I catalog intermediate is 3 to 7 years of serious training. That's a long time. And by the way, every time you take a month off or 6 months off, that resets a lot. And so a lot of people just never leave the intermediate phase because they're like train for a while, they have a kid, they miss 2 years, they come back, and they're like, I've been training for 15 years. And my next question is like, how many of those were consistent? They're like 0. And they're like, okay, you're still an intermediate. Maybe a beginner. And some people, as advanced lifters, they can continue to make gains for literally decades on this plan that I described. That may be you, and it may not be you. So if you're not making gains, think of what you could whittle. Maybe I'm not training hard enough, maybe it's the volume. Eventually you might have to be like, look, these are 2.5 hour workouts now. I'm so big and strong. It takes me so long to warm up. This shit beats me up so much. This just takes me 2 hours to be in the gym. Yeah, then you need to start training 5 or 6 times a week. And then you need to start cycling, like prioritizing this muscle group and deprioritizing that one. Some muscle groups are in maintenance volume, some are in the maximum adaptive range, and all that complicated shit. But you can make amazing gains for years, and most people can get pretty goddamn jacked just on a 4-day approach, even on a 3-day approach. If you want more, invest in more. But if you don't, then, like, you ever been somewhere where, like, you go to a restaurant that's, like, too fancy for you culturally, and they're like, oh, so, how would you like your dessert prepared? I'm like, I thought you guys told me that. They have options you don't understand. A lot of people get into lifting, and they're like, well, I should do SFR. Like, don't worry about SFR. Just go do good technique. You'll be totally fine.
Yeah.
If you want to take your physique to the next exotic level, to really take your gains to something you're milking out all of your genetic potential, that's just going to get get complicated. Everything that is exotic is complicated, so no exception.
That's nice. What I wanted to say is, yeah, I do see a lot of people who consume evidence-based content. We've done as well with like high-level powerlifters, and you do with high-level bodybuilders. You make content for people who want to get that extra 5%, who are like, okay, my arms are 17 inches, I want to get to 18, or they're 18, I want to get to 20. And then they see the content that is presented in the context for those people, they assume that, oh, I now need 3 different prioritization phases for my arm. When in reality, exactly as you said.
A lot of the people who want another inch on their arms, and they're doing something pretty simple, if they tell me, hey, look, like I want bigger arms and this is kind of not happening, my first recourse is not to give them a higher level of complexity. My first recourse is to examine what they're currently doing and see if we can troubleshoot it, because quality comes first. Like if you're like, man, I think I need like a double split, Jared Feather, 8 days a week kind of psycho routine where Jared has like 1-2 sessions a week where he just only trains side delts and triceps, for example, right? Like that's pretty intense. And they're like, yeah, man, I need that. And I'm like, show me how you do a push down. And they're like, I'm like, all right, you don't even know how to lift with proper technique. I show them proper technique and they're, my shit is fucking sore for days. Like, enjoy months and years of gains ahead, and you don't have to make anything complicated. Before you make things complicated, keep them simple and make sure that they are done well. It's kind of like, you know, like if you don't know how to make a fucking pancake and you're like, I need to go to culinary school. No, you don't. You need to watch a fucking YouTube video about how to make a pancake. And then it tastes really good, and then you don't need to go to culinary school. You don't have to call a professional chef to help you make a fucking decent breakfast. It doesn't have to get to that. But then again, a lot of people, and it's totally understandable, egotistically, they're not interested in someone telling them, actually, you're doing the basics wrong. They're interested in assuming that they do the basics right. And then obviously there was, for them, since they're so advanced, only the most RP strength, hyper advanced periodization model will do. You got to earn that shit.
100%, man, 100%. Time and effort. You often see people that are half-assing their shit, and it's like, okay, bro, you've trained for 6 months. You've made some gains. You're not gonna, unless you're a genetic freak, you're not gonna be turning heads.
Sometimes even if you're a genetic freak. Nick Walker, pictures from his first show, and he knows this. He looks like shit. He's some kid with like, you look like awful genetics. Years later, he's Nick Walker. What did he do? Time and effort, time and effort, time and effort. If people aren't interested in putting in time and effort, you know, before the genomics revolution where you just take a viral vector and you're jacked the next day, before that happens, there is just no negotiating it. It's kind of like, you're like, okay, I want to do everything it takes to win world championships in Formula One racing. And I'm like, okay, let's get you in the car, let's get you in the sim, let's get some hours in. Like, when it rattles, it hurts my neck. Like, get the fuck out of my face. Sorry, it's just not for you.
Real science, real doctors, the medical community in shambles. The Matrix in shambles. Dr. Pack, Mike Israetel. Don't forget to like and subscribe and buy us stuff. Buy the Hypertrophy app. Buy our app when it's released.
There you go.
Biggest competitors. We'll see you in court. Thank you.
We already
Take
see you
care.
guys.
Peace.